Hello and welcome to the Analyst, your daily dose of UPSC current affairs from Vajiram and Ravi. Today is 9th August 2025 and we have got some crucial updates to help you stay ahead in your mains and prelims preparation. Let's start with the big stories for mains 2025. Our Prime Minister is said to attend the SCO summit in China. We'll be seeing what it means for us and our geopolitical stance. And next we'll be discussing about the alarming rise in industrial accidents across India and why does negligence keep costing lives and what policy changes are needed. For Prelims 2026, we have some simplified articles from the revision of the OBC creamy layer to the government's 30,000 crore compensation to oil market companies, the MERITE Scheme, NASA's plan to set up a nuclear reactor on the moon and the extension of the PM E-Drive program. So let's get started. Hi guys, welcome back again. A very happy Raksha Bandhan to all of you. I hope you enjoy the day today along with the same. Also do prepare today's current affairs. We'll be starting with the very first article today with our Prime Minister slated to visit China for the first time in over 7 years. And this is a very significant event, more so because the SCO summit is slated to take place at China. And this is why we will be looking at why this is a very significant event. Firstly, we'll be looking at the basics of SCO because from the perspective of GS2, we need to be very aware of the important international institutions where SCO is extremely prominent. And here, we also have to look at their structure and mandate and the various other information. For prelims also, we have various important PYQs where there have been questions related to the same. Now, we'll be starting with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a very, very important piece of an institution in the international affairs. For India, we have to understand that India has not been the founding member of the SCO since it has been founded in 1996 when the first idea of the SCO came to fore via the Shanghai 5 countries. Now, these are China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Now the SCO was founded in 2001 but the idea of the same was reflected via the spirit of 1996, Shanghai 5. Now when it was conceptualized in 1995 to around 2001 when it was formally established, these 5 countries had something in mind. The very first major thing that, in 1990s, the USSR broke down and that is why Russia wanted to establish its international dominance again. And Russia wanted some good partners, and what could have been better than partners in the region itself. So if you look at these countries, all of these countries are from Asia and most importantly from Central Asia. So what Russia tried to do along with China, it tried to partner alongside the common themes that is challenging this region. What are those themes? For example, we need to improve the security and counter terrorism that is ongoing in the Central Asian countries and also in the adjoining areas. We also need to boost trade and investment because we have to not only be dependent on the Western countries, we have to build, self-reliance on our own. So this is what these 5 countries thought of when they were just starting on with the SCO. Also, they looked into cooperation into the energy and transportation sector. They wanted to actually boost their cultural relations because they have a kind of a common culture, common shared Central Asian culture. Also with reference to education, they wanted to boost partnerships. And at the end of the day, you cannot ignore environmental protection. Right now, all of the important policies, mainly when we talk about the West versus the rest, right, such as the global South countries, we have to understand that we have to account the Western countries for their historical responsibilities. And generally, BRICS and SCO and several other summits where the Western dominance is not present properly, these kind of alliances or these kind of organizations are extremely vocal regarding climate change and their own local issues, which the West intentionally tries to ignore over the period of time. So that is why, This Shanghai spirit is actually based on mutual trust, mutual benefit, equality for the countries, respect for their own cultural diversity, and their common development. When we talk about India, India joined in 2017, and this is where Pakistan also joined in 2017. Pakistan always follow wherever India tries to go, but it is a shame that they could not follow our economic development and our aspirations on the sustainable development side. Now, in recent times also, Iran and Belarus has joined the SCO, and the headquarters of the same is at Beijing, China. Very important for your prelims. And also the official languages we have to understand, because China and Russia have been the founding members. They have retained their official languages for the same. And this is where we have to also understand the apex, the apex decision body in the SCO is actually the Council of Heads of the State, which is actually the highest authority. Now we have to actually understand right now why is SCO extremely important for India, because we have to understand that we are actually part of the Quad, we are actually part of the various Western alliances. Now why SCO, where the Western countries such as the US is not at all there, China is there, right, Pakistan is there, but still why we have to understand that SCO matters a lot. Firstly, we have to understand about the geopolitical influence. And when we are talking about all these factors, we are not only talking for India here. We have to talk about all the countries who are actually the member of the SCO. We have to understand from an economical and geopolitical standpoint, we are accounting for around 40% of the global population. I mean, all the countries who are actually part of the SCO. We also are having around 20% of the world's GDP. So the world cannot ignore us. Also, we have to understand SCO. I have already mentioned before, right? West is not part of this particular organization. And that is why, you will be seeing a lot of Western dominance via the NATO. And NATO directly influences various policies of various other countries too. So that is why SCO is also seen as a counterbalance to the same. Also, one of the most important objectives of the SCO is not only for mutual benefit cooperation, but it is actually about improving the security apparatus and also taking stances against terrorism. And it, in this particular matter, conducts always joint military drills, focuses on countering terrorism via various policies, also countering separatism and extremism, while we have to understand the presence of Pakistan in the same jeopardizes this kind of ambitions here. Now, when we talk about the economic potential, SCO and the members we have to understand are actually mainly coming from the Central Asian countries, where we have to understand that in the ancient times, we used to trade with the Eurasian partners via these trade routes, where our Silk route was very prominent, our route via the maritime corridors were very prominent, and mainly we have to understand if India had to participate in the Central Asian trade, we have to connect with the same. And there are so many Central Asian countries where India is directly having interests, right? We have a lot of resources there and India can actually benefit from the same. So our Eurasian trade corridors will be very important. Also in recent times, from an economical standpoint, SCO is also talking about local currency settlements. As you can see in the news here, the SCO members are actually talking about the negotiations in which the members can actually trade with their own local currencies and not use dollars. So this is actually a trend where we see right now is actually the pattern of de-dollarization in the world, because the US is prominently present in all of the economic affairs over a period of time. That is why we have come to use dollars in most of the transactions internationally. But that means that we are actually dependent on the Western countries for the same, and that is why, always SCO is trying to break the shackles of the Western dominance. And one of the most important shackles that you have to break is actually the dependence on your dollar. So that is why local currency settlements is also very, very important standpoint of this organization. And at the end of the day, connectivity and infrastructure via reviving the Central Asian links will be a reality if you are a part of this organization. And that is why India's role in the SCO is extremely crucial for us to acknowledge. We will be looking at from the perspective of opportunities and challenges for India. Firstly, when we talk about the opportunities, this is giving a platform for India to actually be very vocal against Pakistan because of the counter-terrorism measures in the country right now. We have also seen right now when India is internationally condemning Pakistan, bringing up the matter with FATF regarding Operation Sindoor and the alleged involvement of Pakistani terrorist-backed camp in various illegal operations in our country. So this is actually giving one kind of a platform where India can be very vocal apart from the United Nations General Assembly. Also, we have to talk about the energy security because we have Iran, we have Russia. We also have various Central Asian countries where we have a lot of rare earth materials too, right? So this is also giving a fantastic platform. We already are collaborating with Russia and Iran on the crude oil part. So we can actually have a direct forum, we can have direct meetings again to actually talk about the recent sanctions that the West is threatening India with reference to the Indian authorities trading Russian crude oil. So that is also something which will be important from an energy security perspective. Also, we have to keep close ties with Eurasia as we have discussed right now. It is also extremely important, and at the end of the day, multilateral diplomacy is extremely important in the same, because in the last discussion also I discussed, right, that India has to be very close with the West, also with the non-West alliances, and this is actually one of those non-Western alliances. We have to be with US, we have to be with the UK, we have to be with France. At the other hand, we have to also be cooperating with Russia and China and Iran, because India needs to maintain its independence on the foreign policy side. Next, when we talk about the challenges, this is actually a very serious thing. Now, just the same thing which I was discussing about multilateral diplomacy, the same opportunity can be a challenge, because when you actually are present on both boats, right, this can be a positive and a negative thing for you too. Both boats will be giving you security over a short period of time, but when we talk about a long period, right, you are engaging with the Quad, right, where the US is present, you are also engaging with SCO where Russia and China is present. So it can create tensions between both groups when we talk about India's presence within the same. So that is what something that India has to think about, that Delhi has to think about. Also, Pakistan presence actually is a kind of a hindrance of proper functioning of the counter-terrorism measures of the SCO, because Pakistan and China, right, both of them try to block India's agenda when it comes to terrorism. Also, the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is actually a very ambitious initiative from China, which is trying to revive the old Silk Route, and it is doing via various loans given to the countries in the Central Asia, right? It is also having our own sovereignty infringed, because some of the Belt and Road Initiative is also passing through through the Jammu and Kashmir region in the Ladakh part, where China has illegally occupied the province. So that is where India is extremely cautious about. Also, we have extremely low trade with Central Asia, and that is why maybe the Central Asian countries are also not too interested to talk to us on trade matters, on energy security matters, and that is exactly why we have to positively work on this via this summit right now. We have to boost the connections, because we have to actually talk about energy security, talking about Indian businesses going to Central Asia to invest and trade. And at the end of the day, India's strategy of how to deal with the SCO becomes extremely important. So India, as of now, should be pushing for counter-terrorism measures. It doesn't matter whether Pakistan is on the boat or not, right? India has to go ahead with the same. Also, when we talk about Iran, you have just seen how the tensions between the US and Iran were at the very forefront. But that does not mean that we will be abandoning Iran. We have to fulfill our promises that we actually talked about developing the Chabahar port, because that from Mumbai to Chabahar port, and from here to Central Asia, then to Europe, is actually a very, very constructive kind of a trade route for India, because we cannot use the Pakistani soil for transport. We can easily swerve away from Pakistan and enter Iran via the Chabahar port and transport our goods and services through the borders of Iran and then elsewhere. So that is why we have to talk with Iran, we have to engage with it, and we have to build consensus. Also, we have to advocate national currency trade, because the trade, if we are doing with dollars, always involve some amounts of transaction costs. We have to convert our rupee to dollar, then dollar to rupee, and then to other currencies. Always there are some costs involved, which makes our businesses extremely costly. That is why we have to also do the same. And also at the end of the day, we have to use this opportunity for reaching out to the Central Asian countries. In this way, this 2025 PYQ, this year's prelims, is actually talking about the International North-South Transport Corridor. A multimodal transportation corridor. Why? Because we are combining the various canals, the roads, and also the maritime, route from Mumbai to Chabahar port, right? And to the various parts of the rest of the countries. So that is why, this kind of corridor is extremely important. You look at the map and then you let me know what is the answer in the comments. Also, when we talk about the recent visit of a Prime Minister to the Tianjin summit in China, it is extremely significant. And it is coming, in the context of so many things concerning China and the US right now that we are going to discuss right now. So firstly, when we talk about recent India and China context, we have to see why they are coming closer right now. See, even between two friends, whenever we are having some disputes between us, we do not feel good, right? We do not feel good at all because it affects our emotional balance, it affects our, day-to-day functions. And that is why while China and India were actually friends way back, they're not friends right now, but still we are neighbors, right? Neighbors for a long period of time, if they're in conflicts, they cannot become prosperous over a period of time. It is always better to solve the differences while also keeping the challenges in mind. While we cannot tell at all that 100% we will be friends from 5 years, 10 years from now, there will be conflict because China is actually a very important rising power in the global politics, in the global world order. China is not going to back down with reference to various issues because it will be seen as a defeat for China then. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean that China can be improving some relations with countries like India and various other countries. Even with US, it is trying to get into the deals with reference to technology, right? So that is why you have to understand from the tensions in 2020 to 23 with reference to Ladakh and the Galwan Valley clash. From then, we have actually come a long way because in 2024 and 25, we talked about disengagement at the Demchok and the Depsang region, right? Where we tried to pull our own Indian troops back and Chinese also tried to agreed that they will be also pulling their troops back while it is trying to signal for a very first time a positive relation. Also, with reference to confidence building, we are also having Kailash Mansarovar Yatra approvals from China. Also, tourist visas for China nationals have been resumed as of now. And we are also discussing how we can resume direct flights. Now, this is actually coming at the backdrop of Donald Trump's foreign policies with reference to various tariffs, right? So that is why, tariffs will be affecting India and obviously China too. That is why whenever we have some conflict externally, we see this kind of patterns when, two conflicting nations actually try to resolve their disputes for at least a short period of time. But that does not mean that China is sparing us in other matters. In our border dispute, China is still aggressive. Even when we look at the Brahmaputra kind of a project that they are doing at their own Sangpo, river, they are trying to build a dam and they are trying to, pose some geopolitical issues at their end. So that is why we now need to understand how the strategic balancing is extremely important in a multipolar world. I just discussed the multipolar world in my last discussion. So in the comments, you let me know what do you actually mean by multipolarism, and that is why we will be trying to revise too. Also, right now the theme of the SCO for this year 2025 is upholding the Shanghai spirit, SCO on the move, that is SCO on the recent advances and the cooperation that we need to do for the world ahead. And that is why we have to right now shift from Western dominated platforms such as the Quad and the various other organizations. We cannot only depend on them, right? India cannot only depend on them. We have to also cooperate with the various other countries from the non-West camp. Also, middle power diplomacy is extremely important. India is actually talked about as a middle power, and its influence with reference to its own cultural values and economic power will be important in the negotiations at the SCO. Also, the Trump's policies with reference to various issues, right, tariffs and so on, is actually bringing the countries together on the SCO platform, and that is why India also must be collaborating here. Also, we have good ties with Russia, and we are also buying a lot of Russian oil. Also, as of now, as of yesterday, our Prime Minister has talked to Putin, and we are actually trying to resolve some of the disputes here. Also, counterbalancing China's dominance at the SCO is also very important. SCO and China is actually synonymous, and China has a lot of power via funding and various other things. So India has to be also present at the SCO, be very vocal, also trying to assert India's own dominance, because we have the Central Asian countries also to outreach to. Next, Belarus membership recently gives India a very important resource, that is the fertilizer supply, because India imports a lot of fertilizers, and mainly Belarus is known for its potash supply. So that is where India can have exclusive deals with Belarus. Also, we have potential oil and gas agreements on the table with Central Asian countries, so we can also talk about the same. Also, at the end of the day, India must be present at this, because the RATS, which is a regional anti-terrorism structure, is not functioning well due to Pakistan's involvement. And this is why we have to understand, we have to talk about India's growing power in these circles, because recently Benjamin Netanyahu also actually confirmed Indian use of Israeli weapons in Operation Sindoor. This is showing India's direct involvement in foreign affairs, and also the support of India's partners in various avenues. Also, if you see, Putin is also visiting India this year, as Trump is targeting nations over Russian oil. So that is why India has some international backing, right? And that is why that kind of backing must be used at the SCO to further our own interests too. So there is a mains practice question. Also, there has been a PYQ in 2021 related to SCO. So you try to attempt in the comments below. I will be reviewing and giving you some feedback. Now we'll be moving on to the next one. Guys, here in this article, we have a very important article on the disaster side. The disaster and disaster management is a very important topic in your GS3, where we have here in the editorial today relating to industrial accidents, because according to the editorial, there has been a rising cases of industrial mishaps in the country. And this is actually a very sad reminder of the realities of industrial safety in the country. So this is where we'll be discussing with the very basics. Firstly, if you want to write a proper answer in your mains, you have to define it properly. When we talk about defining industrial accident, it is actually an unplanned event in which an industrial setup is resulting in injury, illness, death, or damage to property, also environment. So if you talk about these definitions and include this in your class notes, you already have a ready-made introduction for your answers, so that you do not have to think while you are writing the answers. Now, when we talk about the current situation using the various data given in the editorial itself, we have to understand that the worker deaths in the 5 years in the industrial accidents is amounting to 6,500 according to data by the Labour Ministry and RTI reports. Also, the average deaths per day is around 3, which is extremely high from industrial cases, and most of them are not even reported. Also, the major chemical accidents post 2000 has resulted into the deaths of more than 130 persons in the country. And this is also according to a 2022 study. That means from 2020 to 2022, in only 2 years, we have around 130 cases. Also, with reference to fatalities in these cases, we have around 218 plus. Serious accidents in registered factories, right? It is 1 every 2 days. Now imagine, what about the unregistered factories? What about the informal sector where we do not have registration? And these are actually the accidents which are coming mainly from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So you have a lot of data and you have to incorporate this in your notes. Now what are the main reasons for the same? The main reasons firstly is due to fire and explosion. This was seen in the recent 2023 Telangana industrial blast. Also, with reference to various toxic chemical release, which was made infamous by the Bhopal gas tragedy, after which there is also a very famous series in Netflix. You let me know in the comments if you have watched it, and if not, do definitely watch it. You will get to understand so many things, so many socio-economic realities. Also, Due to mechanical and structural failures such as crane collapse, boiler burst, we have these kind of fatalities. Also with reference to mining disasters, sometimes the tunnel collapses, the roof collapses, there are gas explosions, and at the end of the day, construction site accidents are also very common. And mainly when we try to look into more detailed causes, we find in this editorial there are actually very well substantiated kind of evidences. Firstly, there are regulatory failures. That means firstly we do not have proper fire no objection certificate, right? That is around 70% of the SMEs, small medium enterprises or small industries and medium industries operating without any fire clearances. Also with reference to fake safety audits, they are only having tick box inspections. That means the labor inspector is just visiting, taking bribes and just ticking that it is safe, but at the other hand it did not even try to inspect the kind of factory. Also with reference to the penalties, 1 lakh fine for fatalities is extremely low compared with the 20 crore plus penalties that you have to pay in the European Union if you are facing these kind of accidents. Also, we have a systemic negligence. For example, we do not have fire extinguishers in around 65% of the small and medium industries or various other industries. We also do not have proper locked emergency exits in around 48% industries. 72% industries do not have any hazard training, do not have any proper training here. Also, non-fractional gas sensors are there in around 55% industries too. So you can only imagine that these are the systemic negligence. Mainly here, the governments of the state are to be blamed, right? Also with reference to the corporate side, we cannot only blame the government. There are the corporate people also, such as the owners of these industries. They always believe in capitalism, right? Shallow capitalism means that you are cutting down costs, and if you are cutting down cost, this is actually you are cutting down your expenses. But if you are cutting down the expenses, you are depriving of the right of the people to live with dignity, right? And you are actually depriving your workers of Article 21 here. Correct? Also at the end of the day, many of the workers who are working here are based on the contractual obligations. That means they are not getting any PF, they are not getting any insurance. In cases of any accident, where they will go? Where the money will be coming from? And also with reference to informal sector black hole, that means that if you are not getting this kind of insurances, social protections, right, this informal sector is suffering at the most, because in proper factories and various other big industries you have some kind of social security, but most of our industries in our country are actually operating in the small and medium enterprise sector. That means we do not have proper kind of social security measures for the worker. Despite labor laws, we have small establishments which are actually belonging to the informal sector, and it also becomes extremely difficult to track those workers and give them government interventions. And at the end of the day, government policies via, for example, if I tell that the state of UP has only 12 inspectors for 50,000 factories, can you imagine that? What about the quality of inspection? That means that firstly we are understaffed, right? We are understaffed, and mostly these people do not have even proper scientific training, right? And at the end of the day, if you figure out the ratio of 12 inspectors is to 50,000 factories, this is not a good ratio to be thinking of, right? Also with reference to compensation delays, in case of any industrial accidents, this is having an average delay of 5 years plus in courts. Also courts are being extremely burdened here, correct? Also if you look at a very old data, the data is actually from 2018 and 17, right? So fatality at mines is more than 100, right? And also when we talk about the factory deaths, it is only rising over a period of time. And also when we talk about the most important thing, which is the human cost of indifference, this is insurmountable. You can easily understand that the economic cost is there. That is, if one family member who is the breadwinner of that family is declared dead in any industrial activity, that family plunges into poverty. And if you talk about the global deaths related to industrial accidents, India is topping the list here. This is also kind of a old data that is up to 2019, right? So this you can understand that India is at the top. And we have a lot of such families who are lying in extreme vicious cycle of poverty, right? When we talk about the vicious cycle, it means that if there is an accident, that family is in poverty. And if we are having poverty in that family, the future generations, right, cannot get access to proper education, health and basic services. That means the future generations will be further be in poverty, and this vicious cycle will be going on. That means this is against the Amartya Sen's capability, approach, that the government actually should be boosting the capabilities of health and education, right, via various social security measures, while this is not being upheld. Also, the social costs is actually borne by the orphans, the widows, and also sometimes the family has to migrate to other places. Also, the psychological trauma of the survivors and victims are extreme there. There are no mental health support, there are no proper intervention, sometimes the compensation is extremely low, it is facing delays, and also the intra-generational and intergenerational impact on the children and the health of them are actually worse. So you will get much more precise analysis of the same via the Bhopal gas tragedy series. So please do watch it, you will get a lot of observations there. Also, when we talk about the legal and policy framework, India does have a set of laws, but the thing is that this is actually not being implemented on ground, and also we have so much amount of laws and regulations, sometimes it also create multiplicities. Now the first is actually the Factories Act of 1948, which is giving worker safety conditions, health, working conditions and everything. We have the proper delineation of the same, but the actual implementation is actually very poor. Also, with reference to the explosives, we have the 1884 Act, which is a colonial act, and it is regulating the explosive and manufacturing and handling of the same. Also, we have the EPA 1986, which is looking into the post-Bhopal gas tragedy and how industrial accidents also impact the environment. And that is why we have so many environmental safeguards, we have clearances, so many other aspirations with reference to the environmental impact assessment, with reference to setting up industries in eco-sensitive areas. So we have proper zoning requirements and everything. Also, we have a very, very important kind of an act via the Public Liability Insurance Act of 1991, which means that in cases of such hazardous disasters, on whom the responsibility should lie? Is it the factory owner? Is it the various managers there, or is it the various other stakeholders? So it is actually to fix the liability of paying compensation to the victims. Also, in recent times we have seen how there have been so many court cases with reference to liability. Now, we also have the Disaster Management Act 2005, which is looking into the preparedness and response framework in cases of any disaster with reference to industrial places. Also, we have the National Policy on Safety, Health and Environment at Workplace 2009, and this is actually for converting the factories into an accident-free workplaces. And at the end of the day, we also have the labor codes. One of the same is the Occupational Health, Safety and Working Condition Code of 2020. Now, this is yet to be fully implemented, but this is trying to consolidate all the safety laws. Now, why it is not implemented fully? Because the state governments are actually not uniformly implementing the same. Now, all of these acts which you have seen are not performing well, because we have so many industrial disasters that we have seen right now, right? We have so many cases there, and that is why we need to try to adopt some best practices as of now going forward. Firstly, we need to be strengthening our regulation of the industries. We have to merge all those 15 plus acts that we have with reference to industries into one single act. We try to do via the occupational code here, but it is not implemented properly, and that is why maybe we need a proper independent industrial safety regulator, and that must be backed by a law. Maybe also it must be headed by some dignitary or say corporate authority, which should be responsible to the parliament or the other constitutional authorities. Also, with reference to monitoring and enforcement, we should be having proper digital automated inspection system. It should not be only on the inspector that we will be leaving the discretion to. We should be using artificial intelligence, we should be using various other factors involving technology to conduct such checks. Also, surprise audits linked with penalties, right, with reference to your turnover should be also be there. That means if an industry is facing some disaster or some say blasts or explosions, so the tune of the damage should be linked to the turnover of the company. So that is when maybe the companies will be taking some precautions. Also, we need to have a risk knowledge base. That means we need to set up a national chemical risk database with reference to all of the past disasters. We need to look into the data, we need to look into the casualties, right, of the people. We need to actually be concerned with the various say data that we have got over a period of time, which can help us prevent the future disasters, and that must be properly mapped with GIS and use of satellites too. Also, we need worker-centric measures such as multilingual safety training and regular drills. Now, drills are very important to be prepared, because if you conduct a drill, a mock drill, the workers will know what to do in cases of any industrial accidents. Also, the PPE, the protection gears, the health checkups must be made more mandatory. Also, we must be using technology and innovation, such as we must be installing the Internet of Things, the small devices, right, which can detect the gas leak, right, automatically. Also, we can use AI for predictive maintenance, and that is why government must be giving subsidies for the same, for this technological innovations, for environmentally sound technologies that reduce pollution, that reduce the use of chemicals or fire, right. We need more funding, right, because we have to understand the corporate or say the private industries do not put too much of efforts of installing safety devices and so on. That is why to change the corporate culture, we need to bring in subsidies, tax breaks for safety upgrades, and that is why we have to actually go forward with this kind of recommendations. So you try to practice this question after the discussion, and such questions are extremely important for your mains examination. In this, you can use case studies such as this. You can pause the screen and study what happened here. Some of the data you can use in your answers to substantiate your points. Now with this, we will be moving on to the simplified sections. In the simplified articles today, we have extremely simple articles here. Firstly, we have the House panel who has recommended that we must be revising the income limits for the creamy layer for the other backward classes in the country. Now here this is extremely important, this debate which is going on, which is for our Indian polity and also for the Indian constitution and the features. Within the same, we have reservations. Now in the comments, can you let me know what are the various constitutional articles that are concerned with reservation and mainly with OBC reservation, and let me know what percentage of OBC reservation we have under our constitution. Now firstly, when we talk about the OBC reservation, now OBC reservation is the only kind of reservation which is having two categories. One is a creamy layer, one is a non-creamy layer. Creamy layer simply means one thing, that being a part of the other backward classes, your family has progressed over a period of time. Maybe your family or some member of your family, mainly the breadwinner of your family, has been progressed to group A services or say group B services, right, or they are earning a particular higher income over a period of time. So in such cases, it is a commonly agreed framework that if you have progressed in life, if your income has risen, you do not need reservations, because then you can actually provide your children with more benefits at the basic level, at the schooling level, at the health level. This is why, because you have to distinguish these high income people from the OBC category from the low income classes, because these are the people who are earning as of now below 8 lakh rupees, right. Their socio-economic condition is extremely poor, they cannot afford proper education, they have suffered historical injustice over a period of time, and they need the state support. They need the benefits related to age relaxation in competitive examination, even at UPSC, at SSC, CGL, at all of the important job examination. Also at universities, you have this kind of creamy layer and non-creamy layer, correct? And that is why you need an OBC certificate to actually to understand if you're belonging to the creamy or the non-creamy layer. Now this has evolved over a period of time. The Mandal Commission actually recommended that there must be around 27% reservation for the OBC. Now in 1993, the particular thing was challenged, and according to a DOPT order, the creamy layer was actually supposed to be revised every 3 years. correct? And this was actually after a 1992 challenge of this OBC reservation in the Indira Sawhney case, where it was told that advanced section of the OBC should be kept out of reservations. So that is why they are excluded from reservation benefits. This is actually to ensure that only the socially and educationally backward classes should be getting the reservation, not the already well-off classes. So that is why, it was envisaged in 1993 that this will be revised every 3 years. And in 2004 and 2013, there were gradual increases from 2.5 lakh to 4.5 to 6. In 2017, when it was last raised to 8 lakh, till then, as of now, this 8 lakh limit has not been increased. And that is why, this revision is being demanded right now. Why? Because the parliamentary committee, the various legal experts are telling that there is inflation in the country from 2017 to present times. So what about that 8 lakh rupees you have decided in 2017? In 2017, the 8 lakh rupees could have bought some goods and services. Now, can you buy the same amount of goods and services with 8 lakh rupees in 2025? No, right? That is why the purchasing power of your 8 lakh rupees has decreased right now. You can purchase less things right now. And that is why also there has been income growth. That means even in proper urban areas, in big urban cities, the lower middle income classes are earning 8 lakh rupees, and with 8 lakh rupees in a year, they're struggling to meet the expenses of their children's education, their own expenses, health needs, their own families, their own parents' needs. It is very difficult in urban areas to survive with 8 lakh rupees. And that is why it is important to revise. Also, if you are as a government, if you really want equity in access to the government services, to goods and services, you need more genuine and needy families to be included in the list. And that is why if you are not increasing the limit, you are excluding them due to the outdated limit. And at the end of the day, social justice must be upheld. That larger OBC segments need state support right now, right? In cases of various education services and so on, in various subsidies, right? We actually need to give more support to these communities. And if you are not revising, we are actually falling back. And that is why the committee's key recommendation is that we have to widen coverage. 2017 is long back, and that is why we have to revise right now. Also, exclusion due to limit deprives a large segments of OBCs from reservation in jobs, in educational institutions. Also, when you are part of various welfare schemes, this income limit is seen. And if you are actually earning more, say 8 lakh, 9 lakh rupees, still you are not able to afford it, right? You are not able to get all the services. And that is why right now there have been recommendations to raise this limit to 12 lakh rupees per year, and this should be the creamy layer, right? If you are earning above it, if you are actually not a part of the reservation, that is, you are falling in the creamy layer. If your income is 12 lakh or below, then you are actually belonging to the non-creamy layer. That is why a lot of people can be getting these reservations benefits. Also, the pre-matric scholarship, that is from class 1 to class 10 scholarship, is given to the OBC children. And that is why the parental income limit must be raised also with reference to this particular benefit to 5 lakh rupees per year. And right now it is actually very low, and this kind of lower income is not reflecting the purchasing power in 2025. It is around 2.5 lakh rupees right now, and that is why it should be raised to 5 lakh, because the cost of education has risen. From class 1 to 10 at least, the children should be getting proper education. So these are all the recommendations from here. Now we will be moving on to the next one. The Union Cabinet right now has given 30,000 crores for subsidized liquefied petroleum gas. It is very important for your economic development to know what are the trends in the LPG gas prices and what are the main reasons. Also, from GS3 perspective, you have energy as a part of your infrastructure sector. So that is why you need to know why this LPG price matters a lot. Now, you know that in India, we have various oil marketing companies, as you can see here. Now, they are actually extremely profitable in the recent times, but when you look closely at their main operating, say, business, they are not in a very good shape. Why? Let me give you some example. See, you know that India imports most of its LPG from various countries. For example, say it is importing from the Saudi Arabian Aramco. Aramco is a very big major company which is dealing with crude oil, mainly with India. So on a monthly basis, it sets something which is known as Saudi contract price. On a monthly basis, it sets the prices of LPG, and based on that, the LPG prices in India is also kind of linked. So we have an international price linked with our domestic market price also. But you know, this LPG, the crude oil, these are extremely volatile components. Their prices fluctuate like anything over a period of time. And that is why, you know, consumers like us, you know, they have to pay sometimes more, sometimes less in cases of this kind of fluctuation. So that is why, to control those prices, to help the consumers, the government sometimes limit the price. Government intervenes in the market and it said that, okay, this would be the price. And at this price, the consumers must be buying the same. Now, look at this example here. International link price as of February 2025 per LPG 14.2 kilogram of cylinder in Delhi is around 1028.5 rupees. That is the market price if I am talking about. But what government has told, the actual selling price should be 803 rupees per cylinder. Why? Because 1000 rupees, more than 1000 rupees is actually very expensive for the households in the country, right? Because, you know, this, you know, prices fluctuate a lot and it is actually on the increasing trend. It will be out of the purchasing power of so many households in the country, especially at a time when the government is trying to boost more LPG cylinder access to the villages where we have indoor house pollution due to the burning of wood, coal and so many other things. To actually rehabilitate, we are trying to actually fix the selling price, and that is why the loss per cylinder is around 225.5 rupees per cylinder to these companies, right? So these companies, you know, this public sector, the private sector companies, you know, they are having this under recovery. That means the selling price is fixed by the government is actually less than the price is linked to the international markets. So as of financial year 2025, the top 3 oil marketing companies had a loss of around 41,000 crores. So this means that the compensation must be given by the government. See, firstly, it can do it by direct grants. For example, in 2022 also, it gave some direct grants. Or it can also do the same via raising taxes in various other goods and services that we generally use, and use that money to give to the OMCs. But what happened in this case, in 2025 April, the government hiked the excise duty on petrol and diesel by 2 rupees, and it did not let the same, or say the same hike, go to the consumer side. So customers were actually protected. People like us were actually protected via this hike. But it actually gave around 32,000 crore rupees per year to the government. And government actually used this money as a part of, you know, under recovery that the OMCs were facing, the losses that the OMCs were facing. Also, you know, the cylinder prices were increased by 50 rupees, but still you have to remember that is way less than the international prices right now, right? Also, this money was given to the OMCs. So in many ways, the government tries to help the OMCs because they are extremely important, you know, for our economy, because these OMCs are actually part of our strategic public sector. And these OMCs help us build our fuel infrastructure. That means the, you know, the petroleum, the diesel, right, and the supply of the same via the petroleum pumps. So these are extremely important for keeping our logistics sector going on. So this is a strategic sector. Without it, without helping them, we cannot actually run our economy properly. Also, for the consumers also, we are trying to protect them. We are not letting the prices increase to be passed through them, because the international prices are very volatile. So we are not letting those prices go to the consumer side, and we are keeping the LPG affordable for also the rural individuals, of urban poor, and also we are avoiding political backlash, because fuel prices are extremely politically fragile. There are so many political clashes only due to this matter. So this was all for now. Now on to the next one. Now, apart from the other initiative, the cabinet has also approved another very important scheme for technical education in the country, which is very important for your prelims social sector initiatives, under which we have education and skilling initiatives. Also for GS2, we need to know what are the initiatives that the government is taking for the welfare and the vulnerable section of our population. Now this scheme, the entire MERITE scheme as it is known by, stands for Multidisciplinary Education and Research Improvement in Technical Education, which is a central sector scheme, which means that 100% of the money will be spent by the central government, not the state government. But some part of the money will also be given by the World Bank in the form of a loan. Do remember it. It is extremely important for your prelims examination. Now this will be covering around 175 engineering institutions, 100 polytechnic institutions too. Next, it will be also be covering all the states and the UTs, and mainly it is linked with the national education policy, because we are covering around 175 engineering colleges, polytechnics, and also regulatory bodies are involved. We are trying to do what? We are trying to modernize the curriculum, and we are trying to bring in more research labs, also skill labs and industrial partnerships. So this is mainly the main overall objectives here are to boost employability, to give them proper skills so that they become employable over a period of time. Now also we need more research and innovation. We need to upgrade the skills. We need to train them with digital technologies, financial technologies, artificial intelligence, and various other skills. We need to bring in digital transformation. We need to include the genders also, male and female, all of them must be included together. Recently we have also seen, right, in a scheme known as PM internship scheme, we have around 70 to 30 ratio. That means more than 70 are male and around 30 are female. When we are talking about benefits of some government scheme, it has always seen that the female gender always lag behind in implementation of the schemes. That is why we are trying to also implement the same, and at the end of the day we are trying to include the learnings that we have and apply the same with reference to the various economic sectors. So the main benefits here for the students will be via the internships and the industry partnerships. Mainly hands-on training will be given to them. Also with reference to curriculum, they will be helped with reference to AI, Internet of Things, sustainability or environmental aspirations too. Also, they will be given language workshops, very important, a very underrated soft skill that we need right now. That means we need to train them in English and also in their regional languages. For institutions, we need proper incubation sector which will be given here, right? Now this will be extremely important for those entrepreneurs with very low funds to start their startups, right? Also they are thinking about research hubs, and here the government and industry collaboration will be extremely important. Between the same, we are also trying to bring in universities and colleges, because research and institutions at universities are also very important. Also with reference to digital governance, we are trying to bring in systems for admin efficiency, because at many workplaces the admin are actually not having proper digital tools to manage the employees. And for the faculty, right, we are having the women leadership program here as a part of the scheme to actually prepare for their academic administrations, and also the faculty development program with reference to bringing in global experts, also with reference to their own training, their own curriculum. They all will be framed properly so that they can actually train the students in a proper way. So that is why all those benefits such as guidelines and technical courses, learning employability schemes, research and innovation is actually very important as a part of this MERITE scheme. So keep these things in mind for your prelims and also for your mains examination. Now on to the next one. Now this is a very interesting article here. Recently NASA is planning to set up a nuclear reactor on the moon. Why? Because we are sending many human missions in the future to the space, and also we are planning to land on the moon. India has its own aspirations. You let me know in the comments what is the name of the program that India is aspiring to send to the moon. Also the long-term aspect is to establish our own human habitation on the moon, and that is why if you are sending humans there, we need some power, right? And we need some energy to be operated there. And that is why we have to also consider one fact, that for 14 Earth days, the moon does not face the sun, right? And that is why we have to understand that we are also to prepare for that phase also. That for 14 days, you will not be getting any solar power. So that is why we are combining the fission reactor core, a thermoelectric generator, and the radiator to build a nuclear kind of a power plant on the moon. Now this power plant will be almost be looking like a satellite, because it will be having a long radiator like this. If you can see here, is a long radiators will be there, because you have to spread out the heat that you get from the nuclear fission reactor. In moon you will be not getting, you know, water or cooling equipments, so you have to actually use the surface area of long radius to actually radiate the heat into the moon's environment, right? And it will be going to the moon's south pole because we have ice water droplets or deposits according to various studies. Also we have some instances of some regular sunlight there, so that, you know, actually this particular, say, operation can use the solar power also. So here as a fuel we can use the uranium fuel rods, and this will be extremely enriched at a lower level, not at a higher level, because there can be a risk of explosion too. Also this will be, here we are trying to use a fission reactor, right? We are using uranium for that matter. Whatever the heat that will be generated, we will be trying to derive it to produce electricity. Now the output for the same will be around 100 kilowatt. That will be equivalent to powering around 70 to 80 homes on our earth here, correct? So extremely low. It is said that it will be 10,000 times lower capable with reference to the normal nuclear power plants on the earth here. And with reference to the heat disposal, because nuclear energy actually releases a lot of heat, for that matter we'll be having large radiators to release the same. Now here, do you think that this is actually a part of the space race 2.0? The space race 1.0 was actually with the US and the USSR. We have seen how via the Sputnik missions, via the Apollo missions, both of the US and the USSR tried to compete with each other to fight for dominance of the space. And that is why we back in, you know, 1967, we have something which we know as the Outer Space Treaty, which actually tells that, you know, the activities in the space sector must be only be used for peaceful purposes, not for weapons of mass destruction. These are not allowed for any countries. That is why can actually send missions for scientific research, for various other purposes, not for any mass destruction. But here you have to understand the US and China is right now fueling the space race 2.0. As of now, as you can see, the top two countries are here. India is also within these rankings because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As of 2022, India is actually at the 6th position internationally, right? And this is actually indicating that US, Russia, China all have major ambitions here to actually have more nuclear powered lunar bases by 2030. And whoever will be setting it for the first time, you know, they will be controlling the prime resource zones, and that is why NASA is actually conceptualizing the same. You know, in the big beautiful bill of Donald Trump, it actually cut down the NASA's expenditure, but Donald Trump actually left some funds for the moon missions, okay, because it knows that it, you know, if US wants to dominate in the space sector later, it has to keep out zones for the other countries, and it has to go first. So this was all for this one. We will be now moving on to the last article of today. Guys, here the government has extended the PM E-Drive scheme by 2 years till March 2028. And here we have to keep just one thing in mind. For the e-vehicles of the two-wheeler side, the date has been kept at 2026, but for the various other vehicles, for electric buses, ambulance and trucks, it has been extended to March 2028. The overall money that the government is spending is around 10,900 crores, and it is what is a very, very important scheme right now, because here it is trying to have an electric revolution in the buses, in the vehicles, in the ambulances, in the trucks and so on. Goes by the name of Pradhan Mantri Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement Scheme. This is trying to boost EV adoption via the electric two-wheelers, electric three-wheelers, electric buses, electric trucks, electric ambulances. And it is here trying to have more amount of, say, EV charging infrastructure. So it is trying to eliminate the range anxiety, because we are setting up around 72,000 charging stations. We are cutting down the carbon emissions by using more electric vehicles, cutting down fossil fuels, and also having a proper EV super app which is driven by Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. And here incentives will be given to the people in terms of their Aadhaar card linked e-vouchers, right? Subsidies will be around 15 to 30% of the total vehicle cost. And here, based on the same charging infrastructure, demand incentives for electric vouchers and also e-bus seva scheme will also be launched. So here, the various other aspects here for the charging infrastructure, we are trying to deploy in urban areas around 50,000 stations, highways 22,000, and here we are trying to have fast direct current, slow alternative current, and also battery swap stations too. Very, very important one. The app which is actually developed by the BHEL, the Unified EV app, will be real time giving you the information about the charger availabilities, will be giving you slots for payments. Also, a very important part of the scheme here is the Pradhan Mantri E-Bus Seva scheme, which is under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Here it is trying to target around 10,000 bus which will be driven electronically, and here this will be a form of a public-private partnership. The government will not be only be there. Support for 10 years will be given, and here priority will be given to those cities where we do not have proper organized bus kind of services. Also here a lot of jobs will be created under this scheme. So this was all for today. I thank you all for being a very patient audience, and please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.